Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mississippi Trellis Williams Podcast. We are pleased to have you with us here today. I'm joined by my grandfather, David Williams. He's got a great story, and we're going to talk with him about it here today. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Always good to see you, Trevor.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I wanted to start out talking a little bit about your background. I know that you are from Byram. And right in the heart of Mississippi. Just kind of talk about your upbringing and the time period in which you grew up.
Well, I grew up in a little place called Wendell. And if you go out here and get on Spring Ridge Road here in Clinton and go all the way to the end of it, you get on Old Terry Road right in front of my house where I grew up. Actually, I was born, well, let me get started. My mother and father got married in 1937. And they got married in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. And then they moved up to Cherry Grove Plantation where my grandparents lived. And then they got a little house they rented in Wendell. It wasn't Wendell then, it was just out in the country. But I had an older brother, Larry, was born in 1938, and an older sister, Linda, who was born in 1940. And my older sister, Nancy, was born in 1942. And if you know anything about history, in 1942, we were at war.
That's right.
And so my dad was 27, and he could be a farmer if he would choose to and stay out of the draft, but he didn't. And he got drafted at 27 and was sent to Fort Devens, Massachusetts to be a coastal artillery operator. And he didn't really like that, and he saw this ad, I guess it wasn't an ad in the Army, but this note that if you wanted to go into the hospital unit, you could. And so he went into the first convalescent hospital, and he thought he would just work there, as a carpenter. That was his trade. But he didn't know the first convalescent hospital was going to ship out to New Guinea in the South Pacific. Wow. So he shipped out to the South Pacific, 27 years old, with 3 children at home and a wife who was very young. He married my mother when she was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And so he moved out to the South, went to the South Pacific, and he stayed there until the end of the war. After they dropped the atomic bomb, the Japanese surrendered, and he got on a ship, and took him, I think he said, a little over a month to get back to San Francisco. And he waited there for a long time and got on a train and was let off in Crystal Springs, Mississippi on the first day of January, 1946. And he came home, and exactly 8 months and 27 days later, I was born.
That's
you
right.
can say he was ready to get home.
That's right.
So I grew up there, and we lived in a little house and had a coal oil stove in it. It did have electricity in it, but it was only one little wire that came out each ceiling for the lights. So it was a primitive place. And but in 48, he started building a house. He was a carpenter, and he had 3 brothers who, by the way, they were all in World War II at the same time, and all of them came home. And it was really, God blessed them.
Yeah.
And so he decided he was going to build him a house. He had been renting that property, and he bought 2 acres from Mr. Wynn, who Wendell was named after. And every afternoon he would come home, and he would work on the house. And his 3 brothers would help him on weekends, and his cousins would help him. So all the cost to build the house was the land and the material for the house. One little story, the way I helped, I was about 3, I guess. I was 4 when we moved into the house, but when I was 3, Daddy's cousin named Stanley Gilbert was painting the house. He's painting the outside white and the inside sheetrock green. So for some reason, Mother stayed down at the house, and I was up there with Stanley, and Stanley had to go to the store, which was right up a general store where Mr. Wynn owned the store. And So I thought I'd help Stanley. So I got me a paintbrush, and he'd left some paint open there, and I went outside and I was just painting upside the house.
Mm.
And my mother came up there, and I told her, Mother, I painted the house. The only thing bad, the outside was white, and he was painting the inside, so I painted the outside green.
Oh.
So that was my way to build a house.
What's your contribution there?
My contribution to the house was painting the outside green with indoor paint. So Daddy finished the house in 1950, and we moved in it, and I lived in it till I was 17 and left to go to college. I went to high school in Byram. Byram interior line ended just down the road from us, and so I was one of those fortunate people to get on the school bus first every morning and get off of it last every afternoon.
Yeah.
So, first on, last off.
First on, last off. You almost want it to be the opposite, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. It'd be nice. But so I got a lot of school bus riding when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit more. You're talking about your father going off to war, and just of what you understand, and obviously this is before you were born. What was that like for your older siblings and your mother while he was gone? I'm sure that there had to be some nervousness, some anxiety that went along with that.
Well, Daddy would write a letter about once every 2 or 3 months. They'd get a letter from him, and after he died, I read some of those letters, and he would write my brother a letter, and my sisters. And after I was born, and they would read those letters, I'd get mad. I said, Daddy wrote me a letter, and Daddy looked at me and said, "You were just a twinkle in my eyes, son."
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's another.
Another thing.
Yeah.
I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but one anxious moment my mother had was, back then, if you got killed, they'd send a telegraph to you.
Yeah.
And so they'd send telegraphs, and a telegram, not a telegraph. Yeah. One day, this telegram came to the house, and she wouldn't open it. She just sat and cried and cried and cried. And finally, I don't know, one of our neighbors got to open it. And what it was, my father got in the medal in war. He'd gotten the Bronze Star, and she thought he had gotten killed. She wouldn't open the telegram. So there was a lot of anxiety there.
How long did it take for her to open it?
I don't know. I don't really remember, but one of the neighbors finally talked her into opening it up. And after he got back, of course, nobody wants to go to war, but that was one of the biggest things my daddy ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just very, very honorable. And yeah.
And then the schooling, we went to Byram. There was 5 of us in the family. I had another little brother that came along when I was 10. That's another old story about that. But, crazy about him now. Of course, when you get knocked out of the baby of the family at 10, that's tough. But we get along fine now.
Yeah.
But but all 5 of us went to Byram for 12 years. My little sister, my youngest sister, she's older than me, but Nancy went 12 years without ever missing a day of school.
Wow.
She got a certificate for that. That's something.
That is something.
But I started the first grade in the fall of 52, and I graduated in the spring of 64. And I loved sports ball. I loved baseball when I was a kid. I just wanted to play baseball all the time.
That's right.
I never played any basketball when I was a kid, but we played baseball everywhere. And in the summer we played Little League. And when I got in the 7th grade, they had a 7th and 8th grade basketball team, and I started playing. And I was tall. I was 6 feet tall when I was 12. And so, so I was tall for my age. And my first year in the 7th grade, all I shot was layups. I never shot anything but a layup.
That's right.
And I remember once we played in a junior high tournament. Now, excuse me for wiping my nose. I was playing in a junior high tournament, And in Edwards, Mississippi, if you ever go through Edwards, right when there's a curve, there's a little bitty gym there. I thought it was huge when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
But now it's about 3 steps on each side of the line to get to the goal. But my last in the tournament, I hit 5 layups, and I scored 10 points in the 7th grade. And from then on, I loved basketball. That was my favorite sport.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're at Byram in a class of 28, you play all sports.
Yeah.
I had 16 letters in high school. I had 4 in football, 4 in basketball, 4 in track, and 4 in baseball.
Let me ask you this. So you said there were 28 students in your class?
In my senior class.
So, and I guess Byram was a small school, but it seems like schools were smaller at that time.
Yeah, they were.
Generally speaking. Were there more schools?
No,
or was it or were there not as many
in
students?
an unfortunate situation, this was Mississippi in the 50s. The black kids and the white kids didn't go to school together.
Yeah.
So that made a whole lot of difference. I had neighbors that went all the way to Clinton to go to school.
Yeah.
Or they went to Utica. And the white kids went to Byram. So, I came from that era.
Yeah, definitely. But still 28, if you think about 28 students, that's just not that many students. So
let's go back to the war. In the war, there weren't any babies being born.
Yeah.
And so I was in that era where there really weren't that many babies being born. The next class at Byram, the class of 65, had 67 or 68 people in it.
See, that's okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So, Cherry, your grandmother, and I are original baby boomers. I mean, she was born in October the 6th, the same year I was born on September 27th. October the 5th, excuse me. Excuse me, it's the 5th. I was married on the 6th, the 5th.
That's right. August 6th, yeah.
That's why, because we were right there in the war years when there was no children being born.
That is right. Okay. Yeah. So, and viewers might not be able to tell, but you're 6'7", so very tall. And so you're talking about playing basketball. You're talking about you were 6 feet when you were 12. That's when you started loving basketball. Yeah. I know that you're about to continue on this. Continue to talk about your journey in sports because you said you had 16 letters. You're playing a lot of sports.
Yeah. Well, back then when I was a freshman, when I was in 8th grade, that 10 points when I was in 7th grade made me love basketball. But then my older brother Larry, who's 8 years older than me, at that time he was like 20. He built me a basketball goal out in the yard. He put the pole up. He didn't just tack a backboard up on the pole. He made it come out from the pole so I could shoot layups and not run into the pole and all that stuff. So, and I'm ever grateful for him for that. Yeah. And got me an old rubber basketball. Back then, they didn't have the neoprene like they got now, the all-weather basketballs. It was either a good leather one in the gym or a rubber one outside. And the bad thing about a rubber one outside, if it's on the dirt, after you play with it about 3 weeks, it'll get lopsided.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'll get lopsided. But I'd shoot all the time. Every time I'd get up in the morning and shoot, and I'd get up and in the afternoon I'd shoot. If I didn't have a light, but if the moon was shining real good, I'd even go out there and shoot in the moonlight.
That's right.
And I just loved to shoot a basketball. And I'd play against the Celtics and score 168 points on them, that kind of stuff. You did the same thing when you were.
That's right. Little. That's right.
You always scored at least 50.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, so I did that all the time. But as a freshman, let's see, as a freshman, I got my driver's license. When I was a freshman, I was 6'4" and weighed 140 pounds.
6'4", 140. That's a build right there.
So I go out, and there with no more people, you had to play football. So I went out and played football as a 6'4", 140-pound tackle. And I didn't get to play much when I was a freshman, but I played some. And then when I was a sophomore in football, I discovered another thing I loved about as much as I did basketball, and that was kicking.
Oh, yeah.
I was a kicker and I was a punter. And when you interview your grandmother, I'll let her tell you about the kicking. But I love kicking extra points. Back then, teams didn't kick extra points because you didn't have kickers. You didn't really
That's right.
kick. And so when I was a sophomore, I got to kick. And then when I was a junior and we changed coaches, I actually had a coach that let me kick a field goal.
All right.
And they didn't do that in high school, not in Mississippi. You didn't kick field goals. But we were in a game playing, I think we were playing Port Gibson. And coach let me kick about a 30-yard field goal. Not much longer than the extra point, but it was a field goal.
Yeah.
And that was exciting in those days. So I kicked during school.
Oh, yeah.
And then I played tight end. And I gained a little weight. I was still skinny. I weighed about 185, I guess, when I graduated from high school.
Yeah, and at 6'7", that's pretty.
6'7", and then in track, believe it or not, you see high jumpers now jumping 7 feet and going backwards with the Frostberry flop landing on this nice mats. Well, we had the high school state championship here in Clinton. And the first 2 years I ran the mile. I never could break 5 minutes, but that was good then, running a mile. But then my junior year, I go high jump. So we didn't even have a high jump pit. So we built a high jump pit. My uncle James was an upholsterer, and he had a lot of old foam rubber, and we threw it in. So I high jumped, and we came over here to Clinton, and they had sawdust in the high jump. And I jumped 5 feet 8 inches, and that don't sound much here, but you jumping, you're not jumping on your back, you're rolling over and jumping into a pit of sawdust.
Yeah,
and that won the state championship in the B class.
Yeah,
in the B class in high school. So I was a state champion pole vaulter at 5'8", just tall.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And then I jumped again. In my senior year, I got up to 6 feet and got beat. A guy jumped 6'2".
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I could high jump 6 feet, which now, they're jumping 7.5 feet. And I thought one kid in high school here in Mississippi jumped over 7 feet.
Yeah,
but
there's some serious athletes in Mississippi.
But we were on a cinder runway, jumping into a sawdust pit.
Yeah.
They're on rubberized runways, jumping into foam, into this foam. It's a different game now.
Oh, yeah,
so that was my track, and in baseball, I was a pitcher. Well, the first 2 years I played first base and pitched. In my sophomore year, we made it to the state championship. We got beat 7-6 in the third game of the state championship.
Oh man, who were y'all playing?
We played Ruleville, Mississippi, in the state championship. We beat Bogachita in the South Mississippi, and then I was a pitcher my junior and senior year, and I was a pretty good pitcher. I didn't know any fundamentals. I just ran back through as hard as I could.
Yeah.
And as long as my arm held out, it was pretty good. But then after my senior year, we played 16 games, and I pitched in 17 games, and I pitched in 16 of them.
Yeah, that's illegal now.
No, it's illegal now. They wouldn't let me do it. But that's back then. And we made it to the South State both of those years. We didn't make it to the state championship, but we did when I was a sophomore.
Yeah.
So I played all those sports. And, now, if I went to a school now, in a bigger school, I probably never see anything but the basketball school. I might play baseball. I was a pretty good pitcher, so they might have let me play baseball.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yes, players now, if they're really good at a sport, they only play one.
The only thing I could do in the football now if I was there was kick, because I could kick. There's no way that as skinny as I was going to play any other kind of
oh, yeah.
Because if I was going to play football, I'd been lifting weights all the time.
Yeah.
And in track, they would never even let me see the track. They would have ran me right on by the track. but basketball, loved it. And,
and I wanted to ask you about this. So continue. I think you're about to talk about your high school game. Basketball.
Yeah, the high school basketball games, when I was a freshman, we had a football coach was coaching basketball, and he liked the older boys, and I could, I could play with them, but they were older than me, but I did get to play some. But when I was a sophomore, I got to start, and that's when I discovered I could play, because I practiced so much shooting that I could shoot, and I was big, so I could rebound. And then I did something that in one game, before the game, I ran down the middle of the court and grabbed the ball and dunked it. So that's just another thing. The problem with that, then, not many people could dunk. And the fans, dunk it. And I'd dunk it every time in warm-ups and wear myself out before I got in the game. It took me a little while to learn that you don't dunking only counts the same as a layup.
Yeah.
Or a jump shot.
So you're saying that you figured out that you could dunk it in a game?
Yeah. Yeah, I dunked it in the game. And
you dunked it in the game before you practiced?
Before I did anything.
Wow.
But see, there's certain points in your life like then. That's one of the points. The next year I played was my juniors when I really played football. I played in. I didn't play defense, but I played on offense. And we got a new coach, Coach Spates, who was my high school football and basketball coach, and was also Doug Hutton's brother-in-law. Doug lives here in Clinton. He's from Clinton, and he's in the Mississippi Hall of Fame, Mississippi State Hall of Fame. And he played for all those really good Mississippi State teams back in the early '60s. And he worked at daylight hours. The other coaches didn't work us, but he worked us so hard during football. And after football season was over, we won the conference championship my junior year in football. We were in the Magnolia Conference, and we won that. We had a good football team. And then the first basketball game, I went down to shoot layups, and I laid it up the first time. The next time I went down through there, I jumped up and dunked it with both hands, and then I learned I could dunk it behind my head with both hands. Of course, I was really light and really tall. So
yeah.
But I attributed it to working so hard on the football field. It built my legs up. It built everything up. So
I see. So you just realized that you had gained that ability.
What it makes you know, the harder you work, the better you're going to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I work real hard, and unfortunately, sometimes I didn't. It's just the way people are. But I got good at basketball, and when I was a senior, I had a lot of people coming and watching me play, and I got a scholarship at Mississippi State. And it's a big deal.
Yeah,
the name in the paper and all that stuff. But I got all those clippings now, and if I give somebody $100 bill and one of those clippings, they'll give me $100 for it. But they're great memories. And 100%. They're good memories for you and my family, and and especially my wife of 58 years. She likes those clippings. So
definitely. So now I want you to expand on that recruiting process, because I know that you're saying that you're in a class of 28 students. So you're talking about a small school. You're talking about now you're going to Mississippi State. You're getting recruited by, I'm sure, multiple schools. If you're
I had about 6 or 7 that really intensely recruited me. Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, Memphis, LSU, University of Pennsylvania, and the Naval Academy. I didn't know the Naval Academy, but they did. They recruited people. They sent letters and gave me a couple of, and Davidson coach, I can't even recall his name now, real famous, Lefty Drizel. I talked to him several times.
So University of Pennsylvania, that's Ivy League.
Yeah, Ivy League.
So, how does that work with them recruiting you? Did you have any kind of?
I made a good ACT score. We were the first class in the state of Mississippi that the ACT test was required. We were the first class that took it.
Okay.
And we went and took it, and I did okay. And I don't know where I'd have made it in Pennsylvania. It's been pretty good for a country Mississippi boy to go to Pennsylvania, and I never would have got to come home or anything. So
And what ended up making you what ended up leading you to decide to choose Mississippi State?
Well, the Bay McCarthy, he was a legend. He had won 4 SEC championships, and Coach McCarthy still iced an Eskimo. He was good. He and I've been a Mississippi State fan because my coach, my high school coach's brother-in-law, played for Mississippi State, and I got to go up there. I got to go. I'd go with the Hutton family to ball games in Starkville. So
okay,
and I'd go when they played one game in Jackson every year. And there was a guy named Jerry Simmons who unfortunately got killed my sophomore year in a automobile accident.
Yeah.
Then he recruited me, and he was a fine man. I liked him a lot.
Yeah. So I know you said Bay McCarthy recruited you, but I know that he stopped coaching right there after your freshman year, right?
Yeah, they let Coach McCarthy go, and there's a lot of different reasons. Some people think because he took the team to the NCAA tournament when they told him not to.
Yeah.
Some people think that the people in the Mississippi politicians were out to get Coach McCarthy. That's what. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, but for that, what was it? What did it seem like to you as you were in it?
The 2 worst days at Mississippi State was when I was a freshman, and they fired Coach McCarthy because I'd gone there to play for him.
Yeah,
and it might have been a different ball game if he'd have stayed there. I don't know. You never can tell about that. And the next worst day was when we woke up in the middle of the season, and they came to get us out of bed at 5 a.m, and they took us over to the cafeteria, and they told us that Coach Simmons had gotten killed. He was in Morton, Mississippi, and he had a little Carmen Ghia Volkswagen. He was pulling out, and somebody hit him head on, killed him. And it's a shame there's no building in Starkville named after Coach Simmons. Something should be named after him.
Yeah.
Because he was a good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the reason. When I was playing my sophomore year, I didn't get to play the first game, but a little bit I scored 1 point in the game. And we went up to Virginia Tech to play. And they were leaving the middle open, and we couldn't hit the shot. And Coach Simmons told Coach, go put him in there. You know he can get that shot. And I scored 19 points that game, and that was difference to me. And I don't know where I ever got to play with it. Coach Simmons hadn't done that.
Yeah.
But he put me in there, and I just happened to hit those shots. I could have missed all of them.
Yeah.
and I'd have been a bench warmer forever. Hey, you gotta take advantages of your chance.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that happened to me at Byram is there was this young lady that moved into class with us. We didn't have a 27. This young lady moved there.
Yeah.
And I knew her, and I spoke to her, and we spoke. But at the end of the year, we had a year-end party on May the 15th, 1964. And for some reason, I asked her, could I take her home that night? She wasn't with anybody, and I wasn't with anybody. So she said, sure. And so I took her she wasn't going to her house. She was going to her friend's house. And I took her to her friend's house, and we were going on the senior trip. And since I did that, I called her and asked her, would she sit by me on the bus on the senior trip? And she said, sure. And so we married in August the 6th of 1966 and been married ever since. And she got 6 grandchildren. Do you one of them?
That's right. That's right.
So that's the most important day in your life.
Yeah.
Because without that day, you wouldn't be here.
That's right. That's right. And so y'all met right at the end of.
Right at the end. Oh, we met. No, we knew each other.
Y'all knew each other. Okay.
Yeah, we knew each other. As a matter of fact, at the All-Star banquet, at the banquet that year, we had a sports banquet, and we sat beside each other. And her mother and daddy were there, and but good things happen.
100%, yeah. And so I had one more question about what you were telling me about with Babe McCarthy coaching, because I know that he had a legendary career.
Oh, he was.
With a lot of winning when he had like Bailey Howell and those kind of guys.
Bailey Howell and Joe Dan and Leland Mitchell and Doug Hutton and Bobby Shiles, and he just had a bunch of good guys.
Yeah. But I did want to ask you. So when you found out about that, did you consider leaving or moving, transferring or whatever? Because I know at that point in time, now y'all are married, correct?
No, we weren't married then.
You were not married then?
No, we didn't get married till after my sophomore year.
Okay, so at that point in time, did you consider that? Obviously, nowadays players are transferring for like no reason at all. But I would say that your coach getting fired, the coach that you committed to playing for, would be a reason that you might consider it. Did you ever consider that?
No, I didn't. We had one guy leave.
Yeah,
one man left and went to Murray State, but we everybody else stayed there. Coach Gold was my freshman coach, and I liked him. And he helped recruit me. He had graduated my junior year in high school, and then when he did his got his master's degree, and he was assistant freshman coach. No, he was a freshman coach that year, and then he coached my freshman team. And he was a good guy. I wanted to stay there, and fortunately, it worked out. I got to play. I got to play college basketball against some good players, and enjoyed myself. I look at all this. Of course, it was a different era, and it can't even be compared because, we played 75 games in 3 years. Now they play 130.
Yeah, and
and now everything's better now. I tell people, I watched these when I used to go to all the basketball games before my leg got so bad. I'd watch teams like Florida come in to the gym, and Coach Donovan was there then.
Yeah, and
he'd have 6 coaches, about 8 managers, and 15 players.
Yeah,
and it'd go, and They spend more money on one game now than we spent in the whole 25. I guarantee you, traveling and eating and all definitely. The doctors and stuff they got. We traveled with 2 coaches and 12 players and 1 manager. Yeah, and when we got to a place, and got off the airplane. Sometimes we get taxis, sometimes we get rental cars, and I've driven a rental car. I was a player, and everything was cash in. The coaches would carry cash, and they'd give us cash to eat on and all that stuff. Now, everything's charged. And it's just a different era. Yeah. And it's nothing anybody did wrong. It's just the way the world is now. But these kids are treated first class. And, of course, my sophomore year was my best year. And, I might, if somebody would have had the portal then, I might have even thought about taking some of that money. But, but it's just a different time. These kids now, like I saw Josh. There's one thing I want Josh to do. Hey, Josh, if you watch this, I still hold the record for the most shots in a game at Mississippi State. And I still think it was at Auburn, and I still think the guy scoring the game messed me up because I tipped the ball a lot, and he charged me with a shot on every tip. But he didn't give me a rebound. But I think if it was a shot, it was a rebound too. Don't you think?
I would think so, yeah.
So Josh lighted up one night and shoot it 34 times instead of 33 like I did.
That'd be something. That'd be something else. So then after your college career is over, talk about just moving into the work world and that process. First you get married.
Yeah, I got married and I did get drafted. I got drafted by the Cincinnati Royals, I think in the 8th or 9th round, and I got drafted by the New Orleans Buccaneers. And I didn't make it. I played it through the exhibition season. And I'm going to tell you about my health. Now I have a stiff neck. I have a bad leg. And when I was playing, my sophomore year, like I say, was the best. I averaged 19.7 points a game and 10.2 rebounds. Yeah. And made all SEC, and then junior year, I made all SEC too. But when my senior year came along, I started having problems with my hip, and I just couldn't, it hurt really bad.
Yeah.
And I lost any amount of quickness I had. I never was the quickest guy in the world, but I could run up and down and I could jump and all that stuff. So I had a hard time when I was a senior. And they did give me cortisone shots in my hip.
Mm.
And later on in life, my neck fused and then my arms. And I had doctors. I talked to one doctor and I told him, why did this stuff all of a sudden come on? He said it didn't come on all of a sudden. You've had it your whole life. I didn't know that. But it's a disease that you're born with. My little brother was born with it. But my other three weren't. My other three siblings weren't. And none of my kids are. None of my grandkids have. Thank goodness. I did worry a little bit about that, but I'm glad none of y'all have it.
Yeah.
So if I look back on it, that's when it started. Mainly my senior year is when my hips started hurting so bad. And it was just tough. It was a different thing. And I'm not making excuses because I played as hard as I could.
Yeah.
But it's called ankylosing spondylitis. It's a rare form of arthritis. Not many people have it.
Yeah.
But I still play golf. Of course, I hit from the peewee tees. I hit from way up close, but I can still play.
Yeah.
Still do things. But that's one thing about my basketball career that I look back and I didn't understand it then. I didn't understand why that I had such pain in my hips especially.
Did you ever look back when you were younger and think about times that you've maybe felt some of the symptoms from it?
Well, I never was real limber. In my whole life, people do back bends and all. I never could do anything that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I could jump okay, and I could run, but I never was that limber. And so I think that affected me. Yeah. But I got out of college, and in 1969, we had a sweet little girl named Sunny, was born in June of 69. And then Cherry, my wife, got a job at teaching the 5th or 6th grade, Byram, 5th grade, at Byram Elementary School. So we came full circle.
Yeah. And
I was working for an insurance company, but I also had something over my head that anybody my age has. It's called the Vietnam War and the Draft.
That's right.
So I forget what name, 2S or something, student deferment. As soon as I got out of school, I didn't finish school. I didn't graduate with my class at Mississippi State, but I got out and I was given a 1A. That means you're going. And I was fortunate enough to join the Mississippi National Guard, and I stayed there for 6 years. And along that time, in those 6 years, our second daughter, Misty, was born in 1972. And I was coaching in Vicksburg, and I got out of the National Guard, and my 6 years was up. And I quit coaching in 75, and then your dad was born in 75. Yeah. And then I went to work for a propane company in 75, and then in 77, another company, the Warings, bought out the other propane company that I worked for, and I worked for them until 2003. And in that same time, I rejoined the Army Reserve. I saw an ad in the paper, or Cherry saw an ad in the paper, that they needed soldiers, so I got in it, and it was a military intelligence unit. And I stayed in it, and when I was, in 1983, I went to we went down in the woods and had a big exercise, and this company, the 40th Ordnance Group commander, was our overall commander, and he came down to it, and we put on this big exercise and all these map reading things. And for some reason, the next year he gave me the Army Commendation Medal, which you didn't get in the reserve then. It wasn't just me, it was me and two other guys for that exercise. And I couldn't get promoted because of the way the Army was then. You just couldn't get promoted. So he told me to apply to be a warrant officer, and I applied, and he wrote me a nice letter, and I got promoted to warrant officer. So that was another highlight of my life.
Yeah.
And I stayed in that intelligence unit until 1985, and then they moved to Memphis, and I didn't want to move to Memphis. Unfortunately, Mr. Cochran, who was the unit personnel director for the technician for the 12th Engineer Command, retired, and they asked me to come take his place. And so I took a correspondence course, and I stayed there, and I wound up with 24 years and retired as a CW3 warrant officer. That's another highlight of my life.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then I worked for the Warings until 2003. Nice people. You know, they made me a vice president, and I got to go places. I got to be president of the Mississippi Propane Gas Association, got to do all that. They were very nice and pleasant people, good to me. Mr. D.P. Waring, who passed away in 2014, great man.
Yeah.
And so in 2003, I quit doing that, and I opened my own business, and I started teaching propane safety and hazard material safety for the state of Mississippi and the state of Alabama and local dealers. So I did that until I turned 70. And then I quit, and now I do whatever I want to and whatever Cherry tells me to do.
That's right. That's right. Well, I did want to ask you, so you went over your career very quickly, but how long did you work for Waring Oil? Would you say it's about 30 years?
77 to 03. That's 26 years.
26 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that and kind of how you say you end up being a vice president and all that. So there's a journey that goes along with that. Talk about how you got started and where you moved.
You know, I was a basketball coach, and I detested referees so bad. And they'll run you out of business. I don't see how these coaches put up with them. I saw the coach of Carolina got thrown out in the first inning.
Oh yeah, the college World Series.
People like that. And then the referees and pros, they're so awful.
Yeah.
They're just bad. And so I decided this guy, Mr. Pride, and I thought I was going to go do some work. And yeah, I did work. I drove trucks. I did ditches. I did all that.
Yeah.
And then he sold out to Mr. Waring, and I was doing the same thing. I was driving the 18-wheeler and doing all that kind of stuff. And then I did go back and finish school. I told you I didn't. That's right. But I went back. Cherry told me I need to go back to school and finish my education. And she was right. She was absolutely right. And she said, she was working, and she took care of me while I did that. And her parents helped. Her parents wanted me to go back to school because they were all educated. And they thought I needed to be educated also. And I'm glad.
You were pretty close to being done already.
I just had to go one semester.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, and then I started coaching. I coached at Pearl, Mississippi, and then I coached 3 years in Vicksburg. And then I went to work for the oil company. And then when I went to work for Neil Gas, I guess they saw something in me that I could read and write real good. And I could talk to people on the phone.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then one family sold out to the other. And when they were sold out to the Warings, they put me in charge of the propane company. And I was that till 2003.
Yeah.
And I got to do that. And when I was in the 412th Engineer Command, there's such an elite unit there in Vicksburg. Because they took over half the world. If there's ever a war, they take over half the world for the engineers, because they got world-class engineers in Vicksburg. They got the Corps of Engineers, they got the Waterways Experiment Station, they got the Mississippi River Commission. And they have all these great engineers, and quite a few of them are members, officers in the 412. And I got to go to one year. They sent me over there, and they needed a military intelligence officer because none of the military intelligence officers in the 412 could go. So they put me a W-2, and I was in there with colonels and everything else over in Germany, in Heidelberg. Got to go to Heidelberg and spend 2 weeks. And it's nice. It was a very exciting to be in the 412th Engineer Command. Yeah,
absolutely. Now I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about raising your family.
Well.
So you got started. You guys got started really young too.
Yeah, we were 22 when Sonny was born. Loved her to death, Misty to death, and Will, all of them. And I could talk for 10 days on some funny stories about all of them. They're just great. And then, of course, in October 23rd, 2000, another fella came along, my first grandson.
That's right.
That's you. And you provided us with a lot of good memories.
Oh, yeah.
You and both your brothers. And then our daughter Misty, Sonny chose not to have any children. They've lived all over the world. What they provided us was places to go see them.
Yeah, that's right.
We went to Tokyo and went to Mexico City and went to Porto, Portugal, and we've been all over the place then, California.
Yeah.
And then Misty in 2010 decided to take her my two granddaughters and grandson Jeremy over to Italy. Now they live in Sicily. Of course, now the grandkids live here in the States. They're in school. All three of them are in college. Of course, I just went to see Jeremy jump out of airplanes. He just got his parachute badge at Fort
That's
Benning.
right.
And,
That's right.
Sent me a video of son Michael last night, two-handed dunking. Told if I had that boy's athletic ability, I'd have still been playing ball. He is something. that kid is something.
Still be playing ball.
And King sends me all those good pictures. He's in the photography business.
Absolutely. Listen, one thing you said that brings me to a good question as well. So this is a Mississippi podcast, and you've talked about all these different places in Mississippi that you spent time in, going to, and everything like that. And I know that you growing up, you really were just in Mississippi, Alabama, I guess probably. Yeah. You probably spent a little time in Alabama, but really Mississippi.
I didn't go out of state hardly. I went to when I started to college, I had been to Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Memphis. I don't even call it Tennessee, Memphis.
Yeah, that's barely Tennessee. Yeah, yeah.
But I hadn't been anywhere now with all the stuff. We did buy some, in 2004, we bought some nice motorhome and traveled all over the United States. Now,
that's right.
Now, Cherry and I have been to every state in the Union, Hawaii and Alaska included, and like 20 foreign countries, I think.
Did it kind of make you appreciate it even more since, your childhood, not only your childhood, also you've always lived in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So did that kind of make it a little bit more special to kind of go?
It was special.
See some other places.
It was special, but still, no place like home.
Yeah.
We had fun in other places. We got to do. We got to go into Hermitage in St. Petersburg. We got to go to Mount Fuji in Japan. Places I went to the Great Wall of China. All those kind of places. They're great to see because, one thing about memories is so good. We'll be sitting there watching TV and some Great Wall of China come on. We've been there.
Yeah.
Yellowstone, we've been there. So it's just great.
Definitely. Well, hey, thank you.
Thank you
for coming on the podcast. Love you too. Yeah. And folks, we appreciate you joining us. This is the Mississippi Trellis Williams Podcast. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel, and that's where we have our podcast as we post every week right here on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Until next week, we out.